The Byzantine Empire is a continuation of Rome, its eastern half, which survived the fall of the Western Empire for almost 1,000 years. Its heart is Constantinople, the city founded by Constantine the Great in 330. It was conceived as the new Rome, a capital that would unite East and West. Constantinople stood at the crossroads of trade routes connecting Europe and Asia. Its harbors welcomed ships from the Black Sea, the Mediterranean, and even from distant lands of the East. The city was wealthy, its markets brimming with goods, spices from India, silk from China, furs from Rus, gold from Africa. But the main symbol of Constantinople were its walls. The three tiered fortifications built in the 5th century under Emperor Theodosius I were considered impregnable. They withstood dozens of sieges, repelling attacks by the Huns, Arabs, Rus, and Bulgarians. These walls became a legend, a symbol of the city's eternity. Within the city, Hagia Sophia, a church built by Justinian in the 6th century, towered. Its dome seemed to float in the air, and its mosaics shone with gold. For the Byzantines, it was not just a temple, but a symbol of their faith and greatness. But by the 15th century, the empire was no longer the great power it had been known under Justinian or Basil I. Its territory had shrunk to a few regions around the capital. Asia Minor, Syria, Egypt, the Balkans, all were lost. The empire controlled only Constantinople and a few lands in its environs. The economy weakened. Trade routes shifted and wealth flowed into the hands of Italian cities like Venice and Genoa. The army shrank and the city's population dwindled. Once a city of hundreds of thousands, Constantinople now housed only about 50,000. Greatness and decay intertwined. The mosaics in the churches shone, but the streets were empty. The walls stood, but there was no army behind them capable of defending them. The empire lived on memories of the past, but the future was bleak. And yet, despite its weakness, Constantinople remained a symbol. For the Christian world, it was the capital of orthodoxy, the guardian of ancient traditions. For the Ottomans, it was a coveted prize, the key to domination over both East and West. In 1453, this city became the arena for the final act of a great drama. But before the walls fell, the world once again beheld the grandeur of Constantinople, a city that had stood at the border of civilizations for 1,000 years. While Byzantium was fading, a new power was rising in the east, the Ottoman Empire. Its history began in the 13th century, when a small principality in Asia Minor gradually expanded its territory. The Ottomans were energetic, ambitious, and adept at exploiting their neighbors' weaknesses. In the 14th and 15th centuries, they conquered the Balkans, subjugating Serbia, Bulgaria, and Thrace. Their army was distinguished by its discipline and brutality. Of particular importance were the Janissaries, elite troops formed from Christian boys taken as children and raised in a spirit of absolute loyalty to the Sultan. These soldiers became a symbol of Ottoman might. By the mid-15th century, Mehmed I became Sultan. Young and energetic, he was only 20 years old, but his ambitions were enormous. He dreamed of transforming the Ottoman Empire into a world power. To achieve this, he needed to conquer Constantinople, a city considered impregnable for centuries. Mehmed understood that the fall of the Byzantine capital would be more than just a military victory but a symbol. He wanted to go down in history as the conqueror, the one who destroyed the remnants of the Roman Empire and made Istanbul the capital of a new world. The Ottomans prepared meticulously. They assembled a huge army, tens of thousands of warriors. But their main weapon was cannons. The Hungarian master craftsman Urban created gigantic guns for the Sultan capable of destroying walls considered eternal. These cannons fired cannonballs weighing hundreds of kilograms and could penetrate stone fortifications. Byzantium had become accustomed to relying on its walls, which had withstood sieges by the Arabs and Rus. But now they were confronted with the weapons of a new era. Artillery changed the roles of war. Mehmed I also demonstrated strategic genius. He ordered the construction of the Rumeli Hezari fortress on the shores of the Bosphorus to block aid from the Black Sea. He assembled a fleet to blockade the city from the sea. Constantinople was surrounded. For the Sultan, this was a matter of honor. He told his soldiers, "I will not retreat until I take this city." His determination inspired the army. The Ottomans believed that the fall of Constantinople was predetermined. Thus began preparations for the Great Siege. Byzantium stood on the brink of destruction, and the Ottoman Empire prepared for its greatest triumph. Emperor Constantine XI Palaeologus became the last ruler of the Byzantine Empire. His fate was tragic. He assumed power at a time when the empire had effectively ceased to exist. Its territory had shrunk to a few cities and lands around Constantinople. All that remained of the once great power was the capital and its walls. Constantine XI was a brave and honest man. He understood that his mission was not to expand the empire but to preserve its last remnants. He tried to strengthen its defenses and raise an army, but his resources were too limited. The city had a population of about 50,000, and only a few thousand were able to bear arms. The emperor appealed to the West for help. He wrote letters to the Pope, the kings of France and England, and the rulers of Italy. But Europe was preoccupied with its own affairs. France and England had just emerged from the 100 Years' War. Italy was plunging into civil strife, and the German princes were unwilling to intervene. Help came only from small contingents of Genoese and Venetians who arrived in the city, but their forces were insignificant compared to the Sultan's army. Conflicts reigned within the empire. The question of an alliance with the Catholics divided society. To secure Western aid, Constantine XI agreed to the union of the churches, recognizing the authority of the Pope. But many Byzantines perceived this as a betrayal. They said, "Better a Turkish turban than a Latin tiara." These words reflected despair and distrust of the West. Despite his weakness, the emperor did not give in. He strengthened the walls, prepared the city for defense, and stockpiled supplies. He understood that a siege was inevitable. The last years of the empire were a time of expectation. People lived in fear, but also in hope. They prayed in Hagia Sophia, hoping for a miracle, believing that God would protect their city. But the miracle did not come. Constantine XI became the symbol of Byzantium's final efforts. He was not a great conqueror like Justinian, nor a wise administrator like Basil I. But he was the last emperor who remained loyal to his people and his capital to the end. His reign became a prologue to tragedy. The empire was fading, and everyone understood that the end was near. But no one could stop fate. Byzantium stood on the brink of destruction, and its final years were filled with anxiety, prayer, and anticipation of the inevitable. In April 1453, the Great Siege of Constantinople began. Sultan Mehmed II's army, estimated at between 80 and 100 warriors, surrounded the city. Among them were the Janissaries' elite troops, cavalry, artillerymen, and sailors. The Ottomans brought dozens of cannons, including a gigantic bomber designed by the master craftsman Urban. This weapon could fire cannonballs weighing over half a ton and destroy even the strongest walls. Constantinople was defended by only about 7,000 warriors. Among them were Byzantines, Genoese and Venetian allies, and volunteers from various countries. They were commanded by Emperor Constantine XI and the Genoese captain Giustiniani Longo, an experienced warrior, who took charge of the defense of the walls. The city walls, built in the 5th century, withstood the attacks, but the artillery gradually eroded them. Every day, the Ottomans shelled the fortifications, creating breaches. The defenders hastily filled them with earth and stones, erecting wooden barricades. It was a battle of attrition. Sultan Mehmed II ordered the ships to be towed overland to bypass the chain blocking the entrance to the Golden Horn. This became one of the most impressive episodes of the siege. Hundreds of ships were guided along greased logs and found themselves inside the bay, threatening the city from a new direction. The residents of Constantinople lived in constant fear. They prayed in Hagia Sophia, hoping for a miracle. But the miracle never came. Every day brought new destruction, new victims. Despite the desperate situation, the defenders held firm. The emperor himself stood on the walls, inspiring the soldiers. Giustiniani Longo demonstrated courage in organizing the defense. But the forces were too unequal. The siege lasted almost 2 months. The city was surrounded on all sides. The navy blockaded it from the sea, and artillery battered the walls. Constantinople stood firm, but its fall was only a matter of time. At the end of May, the Sultan decided to strike a decisive blow. He prepared his army for a great assault that would mark the final of Byzantium's 1,000-year history. On May 29, 1453, a day came that would go down in history as the end of the Byzantine Empire. Sultan Mehmed II ordered the decisive assault. The Ottoman army, numbering tens of thousands of soldiers, advanced on the walls of Constantinople. The assault began early in the morning. Mercenaries and less experienced troops attacked first. Their goal was to exhaust the defenders, forcing them to expend strength and arrows. The city's defenders fought back courageously, hurling stones, pouring boiling oil, firing crossbows and cannons. But the waves of attackers continued. Then the Janissaries, the Sultan's elite troops, entered the battle. They marched in orderly ranks to the beat of drums and the sound of trumpets. Their discipline and determination were terrifying to the defenders. The Janissaries attacked breaches in the walls created by artillery and gradually advanced into the city. Emperor Constantine XI himself was on the walls. He fought alongside his soldiers, inspiring them by personal example. His words before the battle became legendary: "The city is entrusted to me by God, and I will not abandon it." For the Byzantines, he was not just a ruler, but a symbol of resistance. The Genoese captain Giustiniani Longo, who commanded the defense, was seriously wounded during the battle. His departure from the battlefield was a blow to the defenders. Many lost hope when they saw their chief commander abandon the walls. The Ottomans intensified their assault. In several places, they managed to break into the city. Panic set in. The defenders retreated and residents fled to churches, hoping to find salvation. But there was no salvation. Emperor Constantine XI died in battle. His body was never found. Legend has it that he removed his imperial robes and fought as a simple warrior, dying alongside his soldiers. For the Byzantines, he forever remained a symbol of the last emperor who died defending his city. The Ottomans stormed Constantinople. The massacre began. Hagia Sophia was converted into a mosque. The city, which had been the capital of the empire for over 1,000 years, fell. The final battle marked the end of 1,000 years of history. Byzantium was gone, but its memory remained forever. The fall of Constantinople on May 29, 1453, was an event that shook the entire world. For Europe, it was a true shock. For 1,000 years, Byzantium had been considered the shield of Christianity, a barrier between East and West. Now this shield had collapsed. The Ottomans consolidated their hold on the city and made it their new capital, Istanbul. Sultan Mehmed II immediately understood the significance of the victory. He turned Constantinople into the center of his empire, which would endure for centuries. The city became a symbol of Ottoman power, and its walls and churches became part of a new civilization. For Europe, the fall of Constantinople meant the end of the ancient world. Many scholars, artists, and artisans fled to the west, escaping the Ottomans. They brought with them books, knowledge, and traditions. It was this influx of refugees that became one of the factors that contributed to the beginning of the Renaissance. Europe gained access to ancient texts that had been preserved for centuries in Byzantium. For the Orthodox world, this was a tragedy. Constantinople was the spiritual center, the seat of the Patriarch, and the site of Hagia Sophia. Its fall symbolized the end of an entire civilization. Many Orthodox peoples, Russians, Serbs, Bulgarians, perceived it as a personal catastrophe. Moscow began to talk of becoming the Third Rome, the heir to Byzantium. The political consequences were enormous. The Ottomans gained control of the trade routes connecting Europe and Asia. This forced Europeans to seek new routes, hence the beginning of the Age of Discovery. Columbus, Vasco da Gama, Magellan all sought a route to India and China that bypassed the Ottoman blockade. The fall of Constantinople was a turning point. It ended the 1,000-year history of the Roman Empire, but ushered in a new era, the era of the Ottoman Empire. The Renaissance and the Age of Discovery. For contemporaries, it was the end of the world. But for history, it was the beginning of a new world. Although Byzantium fell in 1453, its legacy lives on today. The empire, which considered itself a direct continuation of Rome, left the world a rich cultural and spiritual legacy. First and foremost is the preservation of ancient knowledge. Byzantine monks and scholars copied books for centuries, preserving the works of Plato, Aristotle, and Hippocrates. It was thanks to them that Europe gained access to ancient philosophy and science. When Constantinople fell, many scholars fled to the West, bringing manuscripts with them. This became one of the sources of the Renaissance. The second legacy is art and architecture. Byzantine mosaics, icons, and churches had a huge influence on the Orthodox world. Hagia Sophia in Constantinople is still considered one of the greatest architectural monuments. Its dome inspired builders for centuries, and its interior decoration became a model for churches throughout the world. Third is religion. Byzantium was the center of orthodoxy. Its theology, its liturgy, its spiritual traditions live on to this day. For Russians, Serbs, and Bulgarians, Byzantium became a source of faith and culture. After the fall of Constantinople, Moscow began calling itself the Third Rome, the heir to the Byzantine tradition. Fourth, ideas. Byzantium was an empire where philosophy and religion intertwined, shaping the worldview of millions. Its theological debates, its search for truth, left a deep mark on history. Even the fall of the empire became a lesson for future generations. It showed that even the most powerful states are not eternal, but their culture and ideas can survive the centuries. Today, when we look at the ruins of Constantinople, at the walls once considered impregnable, we remember not only tragedy but also greatness. Byzantium is dead, but its spirit lives on in history, in culture, in the memory of humanity. The fall of Constantinople marked the end of one era and the beginning of another. But the legacy of Byzantium continues to influence the world, reminding us that civilizations die, but their ideas endure.